with a lot more freedom of speech if you don't. So, good morning. Today is Thursday, April 28th, 2022. This is a meeting of the Senate Natural Resources and Energy Committee, and we are taking up several bills this morning with an eye towards voting and moving more bills out of committee. So, as a heads up, on the docket this morning is a review of the amendment from appropriations to H715, which is an activating clean heat standard, followed by H500, activating the sale of mercury lamps in the state, followed by H446, an act relating to miscellaneous natural resources and development subjects, followed by H175, an act relating to the beverage container redemption system. Oh yes, and we have 11 gubernatorial appointees to review and be ready to vote on next week. So I'd like to work with people to spread those out for the available. None of these have to be floor recorded. They are all checking in with the individual to make sure they're ready, willing, and able to serve. Some of them may already be serving.
They're all related to this committee.
They're all yes, they're all related to this committee. Okay.
So check back.
This you are the check back. So with that, Mr. Kowski, if you could please walk us through this appropriation committee's proposal of amendment to our report. 715. Thank you.
Sure. Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. The Committee on Appropriations approved draft 2.1, so it's the amendment you have before you. And what it does is that it prohibits the PUC from filing the rules implementing the clean heat standard. They cannot file the rules until the legislature gives the okay to do so. And so that is accomplished in the 3 instances of the amendment that are in this amendment. So first, in the first instance, a new section is added to the statute. And so it's rulemaking authority. And so notwithstanding any other provision of law to the contrary, the commission shall not file proposed rules with the Secretary of State or issue any orders implementing the clean heat standard without specific authorization enacted by the General Assembly. So this is going to require that when the PUC wants to file the rules, they'll need authorization in the form of legislation passed by the General Assembly. Second, the other thing one of the things that the Appropriations Committee changed is there's another interim report added that replaces the sort of initial rules that were in the bill that you passed. So on or before October 1, 2023, the Commission shall submit to the General Assembly an interim report on the development of the clean heat standard. So this would be, it would be the second of now 3 reports on the development of the clean heat standard. And it previously was, October 1, 2023 was previously when they would have needed to file initial rules. And then third instance of amendment is the final instance, so it's on page 2. So final rules on or before January 15th, 2024. The PUC shall submit to the General Assembly final proposed rules to implement the clean heat standard. The Commission shall not file the final proposed rules with the Secretary of State until specific authorization is enacted by the General Assembly to do so. Notwithstanding 3 VSA 820, 831, 836 through 840, and 841A, upon affirmative authorization enacted by the General Assembly authorizing the adoption of rules implementing the clean heat standard, the Commission shall file as final proposed rules the rules implementing the clean heat standard approved by the General Assembly with the Secretary of State and LCAR. The filing shall include everything required in 3 VSA 838A 1 through 5, 8 through 13, 15, 16, and 841B1. Upon review, adoption, and effect of the rules implementing the clean heat standard, rules implementing the clean heat standard shall be governed by 41C and 842, exclusive of. So I'll go through what we're all, but this is part of the Administrative Procedures Act that are being waived. And what that will do is actually expedite the process. Yes.
And waive part of the administrative procedures.
Yes. Once adopted and effective, amendments to the rules implementing the clean heat standard shall be made in accordance with the Administrative Procedures Act. So I can go through all of the individual citations that are being waived, but what this is setting up is that the PUC will have final proposed rules in January 15, 2024, so the 2024 legislative session. They will propose them to the General Assembly. The rules cannot be filed with the Secretary of State until the General Assembly passes an act authorizing them to do so. The language in subsection 2 waives parts of the APA, including the requirement of pre-file with ICAR. And I have the full list. Pre-filing, the procedure, publication, public hearing, public comment. So the initial phases of the APA before LCAR. So those are being waived so that once the General Assembly does authorize the rules to be adopted, the rules will go directly to LCAR. And so LCAR will go through their process, approve or object if they would like to, and then the rules can be adopted and go into effect. And so based on this timeline, it should still coincide roughly or almost exactly with the original deadline of having the rules be adopted by July 1, 2024, so that they can take effect January 1, 2025. So by waiving in this bill the initial steps of the APA, it keeps the timeline.
So my understanding of why that would be a comfortable thing to do, or sort of an acceptable thing, is that because during the development phase of the rule, we have those 12 meetings, 8 of which are mandatory. Once the PUC said they thought they'd probably have another dozen meetings or more workshopping elements with it. And then we have a full legislative session to review the rule. And I think my sense from Chair Kitchell was that we would be the ones sort of representing the public interest that the General Assembly as a whole, taking our testimony here. Otherwise, it would be sort of worrisome to me to take any notice and comment provisions out of APA.
What does it mean to approve? To pass a statute or to have a vote that says we approve?
So
The
this,
legislature.
this is requiring the legislature adopt legislation authorizing the PUC to file rules. And so presumably that won't happen unless the legislature approves of what's in the rules. At that time, the legislature will have the ability to amend the law and so, in other ways. And so if there's anything in the rule, and because the PUC won't have filed the rules at that point, the legislature will be able to weigh in. So it is not clear.
Pardon?
It's not clear what approved means in this, other than that approval takes the form of authorizing the PUC to move forward with filing the rules.
Well, there's a vote of the legislature, the two bodies.
Yes.
It says we hereby say it's okay to go ahead and file the rules. Is that what happens?
Well, yeah, so the bill will probably actually need to repeal the first section that I read, the statutory provision preventing them. So that would be one element of the legislation. or amending it in some way to clarify that they are authorized. So it wouldn't the bill itself won't necessarily need to say,
But it's a bill,
yes, it's
so the
going to,
governor has to sign it.
yes.
Oh, that's coming back to the governor.
Yes, it's going to need to be, it's authorization enacted by the General Assembly.
So that's a 2/3 vote instead of a majority vote.
Well, should it be vetoed?
But it's billed as the legislature would have to act, as opposed
And you need the governor or chief or
to chief executive officer who's in charge.
Yeah, so it is, we tried to craft a check back, right? And it was deemed not strong enough.
My other question, Mr. Chair, was what if on the dates in question, the PUC or whatever just fails to produce rules? Is that when the citizen lawsuit takes place, where someone steps up and says this Sons of Guns didn't do what they were supposed to? Is that the option at that point?
getting back to your earlier point. Can the legislature approve by resolution?
No,
Legislature is approved, there's not a resolution approving.
no, it needs to be enacted.
We had quite a long discussion about that in appropriations and sent you out of the room numerous times to try to make sure that that was not the case.
So there's the governor with the kibosh.
But this isn't to check it back with the legislature, this is check it back with more.
So that is right. So we had, our version of check back was 2 reports plus LCON with committees of jurisdiction weighing in through LCON. So it didn't require anything enacted by the legislature. And I guess, Senator personally kind of way of saying it. If it's a good program that we think is well constructed, well designed, and likely to be successful, that it should be able to withstand that level of scrutiny and be affirmatively voted on.
Be more trusting.
So, wait. So, what if the PUC doesn't deliver anything in a timely fashion to have this take place? Is at that point, does current law authorize, which authorizes, say, you guys didn't do it, go to court for the answer? Does that remain in effect, or does this thing supersede that?
So I want to say no, but I am not 100% sure. So agencies miss rulemaking deadlines all the time. In order to, I'm not a litigation attorney, so I'm gonna head into my depths here. There isn't a citizen suit provision in the Clean Heat Standard. So it would default to whether or not a person outside a regular citizen would have standing to sue the PUC for inaction. They would need to demonstrate that they had been aggrieved by the PUC by missing the deadlines. I don't know actually how common that is, or who would likely have standing to actually say that they had been aggrieved by the PUC failing to meet a deadline.
But that's in current law. That if the government its various parts doesn't act to carry out the global warming solutions act.
Oh, no, so that's, no. So that, the citizen supervision of the Global Warming Solutions Act does not kick in until a deadline, what the 2025, 2030, or 2050 threshold has been missed. And that can't happen until the greenhouse gas emissions inventory demonstrates that we have not reached the reduction level necessary. So that couldn't happen in January of 2024 because we won't have hit the January 2025 deadline and gotten the report back that we've missed the deadline. So under the Global Warming Solutions Act, no.
So you have to wait until 2025, even though it's next year. Oh, you'd have to wait until 25, because that's the loss.
Well, and as the cleaning standard right now is not going to help meet the 2025 threshold anyways, because it's not intended to kick in till after 2025 itself.
Yes, they're right in the court brief now.
Just wanted to check, I thought I heard you saying that there's a citizen supervision in the clean heat.
No, there is not. That's why the answer is no, unless there's a general provision of law that could find that they've been aggrieved under.
That's good, because that's, I think that's actually surprising. Read it a lot of, right?
But there's a citizen supervision in the
Global warming, right? Which, given the lag time for producing the data, probably means the suit couldn't come before 26 or 27. Trails by about 1 to 2 years. Our task here is to take a committee position on the proposal amendment from appropriations, so that when the floor report comes up today, I can speak on behalf of the committee on what our view is of it.
This is sounds more like a constitutional amendment than a bill.
But to me, it's a fairly straightforward process, and we have a process where altering the past require explicit action on the part of the legislature before the rule is filed.
No, it's an explicit act upon the part of the legislature and the governor. Is that correct?
Yes. Unless, it would be regular presentment. So it would be the passage by both bodies and presented to the governor. Should the governor veto the bill, then it could come back. Yes.
So it's not.
Yeah.
You could get legislative action, but doesn't resolve it in and by itself.
If I were to put on my practical hat, I would say we're in a position where without this provision, where my understanding is we're very likely to see a veto. So I don't know that we're moving from any position of strength in terms of saying we're going to reject this on this one. I'm just being direct about it. So, but I don't want to push this along too fast, although we do need to make a decision. I'd like to hear where the committee lands on this. We'll need to report. Senator West, you're on the committee, you voted for it.
I voted in favor of it. I, as was clear in here, I voted against the bill when it left this committee, and with this amendment, I will vote for it on the floor. And I think you're correct. It was very clear from the administration's point of view. Since you bring up the administration sometime in the distant future, in the immediate, they want to check back, and they'll probably veto the bill if they don't have a check back. So, so then you face the whole issue. Will the legislature come back? Can the legislature override that now? I think from my point of view, it puts us in a position where this will move ahead. You're probably avoiding a veto now, and if the PUC does its work, you'll have a plan in front of the legislature to vote a year from now. And that's way further ahead than you'll be if you get a veto now.
You could check back on civil unions, that would be interesting.
Well, I will tell you, with all the ARPA money, we appropriated the money and then told them, bring the plan back to us. So we had to check back on all of that.
Thank you. Senator McCormick?
Well, I mean, I've made so many compromises already on this bill. And I'm not sure, I don't regret that. Sometimes good enough has to be good enough. Constituents, I'm trying to explain that to now. They're saying we should kill the bill because it's not strong enough. I'm arguing, no, we need to do what we need to do to get it through. But at what point do you start saying, okay, I think we can pretty well see the future.
What future is that?
The future will be that we'll have passed a very beautifully wrapped package with not a whole lot in it.
Price of fuel, fossil fuels maybe $8 a gallon in Europe in 2 years. Fuel companies might be saying they just as soon sell to Europe instead of selling here, and suddenly it'll look attractive.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the beautifully wrapped package is. So you're talking about this bill now?
No, yeah. And in other words, we call it the clean heat bill. Probably ought to be called the not quite so dirty bill.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm disappointed because I thought we were coming back to check with the legislature, and apparently, that's not the case. It's having to redo the bill over again, more like a constitutional amendment where you got to vote on it 2 times. That seems to be the fossil fuel companies seem to be running the show here, and they're going to have to play by their game.
Well, then, so thank you. I mean, the distinction I would make is that today we're being asked to consider moving forward a plan to have the PUC through rulemaking develop a detailed implementable plan, which we don't have. 2 years from now, we'll have to affirm that we believe that's actually a well-crafted plan, and we'll vote on the plan prior to implementation. So I don't think of them as synonymous, but I understand, and I know that people don't like the exposure to a second vote, but that is the nature, I suppose, of divided government and the current reality. So
We'll have a plan in front of us.
yeah.
So
With that,
again, we're planning to plan.
well,
Yeah.
I would say, what's the alternative? We have all the guidance on how to design this program is originating with the legislature. The PUC is acting under our direction. They're not writing somebody else's plan, they're writing our plan. When it comes back, we get to evaluate and speak up whether or not we think that's a well-crafted plan.
Mr. Chair, sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't.
Right.
We've asked them, and they've assured us, promised to come back, and then not done so. So that's the world in which we live, and they'll do what they choose to do. So
Well, the fact
regardless of whether or not we pass this amendment, the PUC can sit on its hands and not do anything like they have done before, or not meet timelines like they have done before.
Well, and the alternative, which some people suggested, was that the legislature craft the cleaning standard as statute, which I would say, frankly, is beyond
I
the
don't
capacity
think any one of us.
of the legislature to do, technically speaking. We don't have all the analysts.
So we're going to vote for a plan that allows the minority to stifle it, because we believe how our democracy works.
So, I would, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to just hold the vote as if you need to report on behalf of the committee where we are. I will check with Senator Campion, who's doing something with education. Make sure he's had a chance to read the board. So, Senator Weston, you're a yes?
Yes.
Senator McCormick?
How did you phrase your question?
I said, we need to take a position on the proposal amendment from appropriations.
Would I support?
Would you support the proposal amendment from appropriations?
I will not. I would argue against it on the floor and urge our colleagues not to accept it.
Okay. Senator McDonald.
Got a gun to my head, I'm not stupid, so.
Okay. So I'll check it with Senator Campion, and we're either, well, we're at the moment we're 3-1-1. That's 3-0-1, and we'll see what the final tally is for forward. Any
3-1.
3-1.
Oh yeah, sorry.
I
Yeah,
get it.
yeah. 3-1-1.
Not for much, but
I got the, should stay where I was. Any questions for council before we move forward? Okay. And, okay, thank you very much. Okay, so the next order of business is H500, an act relating to the prohibiting the sale of mercury lamps in the state. Our counsel on this is Mr. O'Grady. You don't have the moment. You need to get off.
I need to, sorry.
I would just want to make sure, maybe you take it with you, maybe you come back. We have a next version of the bottle bill.
And do you think you'll be taking that up?
At approximately between 9:15 and 9:30.
Okay, I'll try to be back here no later than 9:30.
Okay. So, we, as I said, we don't have counsel with us. Elsewhere. No surprise here. And actually, Mr. Burns, it's fortuitous that you're here. You want to, so I've been through, I've been through the bill, and it's yet another instance of us chasing down mercury out in the environment and getting it into a program. But as I don't know if you would like to just join us at the table and talk a little bit about it, because I know that this has been an initiative that you've been working out with your colleagues, and you can do a more sort of citizen-friendly introduction to it than I can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Paul Burns. I'm the executive director of VPIRG, the Vermont Public Interest Research Group. We are among the organizations in support of H500, the legislation before you that would effectively phase out the sale of 4-foot linear fluorescent lamps in Vermont. You're correct that this is one more step in Vermont's numerous efforts to try to minimize human exposure to mercury, particularly mercury in products. This is something that the Vermont legislature has been working on for many years. In fact, about 10 years ago, legislation was passed here to create a collection program, a extended producer responsibility program for lamp manufacturers, in this case, lamp means a light bulb or a linear lighting product. And you can take them back to hardware stores today because all of these fluorescent lamps contain very small amounts of mercury, but enough mercury so that if that lamp or light bulb were to break in a room like this or a school classroom or your home, that is a threat to anybody who is in the vicinity because there's enough mercury that is dispersed in that process. So it's a serious issue. But more than that, these fluorescent light bulbs were put into place as a way to replace the incandescents. And you may have seen in the news just in the last 24 hours or so, the Biden administration is moving forward to eliminate the future sale of incandescent bulbs in this nation. That proposal was put on hold by former President Trump and his administration. But the idea was that they are so terribly inefficient that we have technology that is better. And 10 years ago, that technology included the fluorescents, but now we have LED lamps and light bulbs and lighting products enough to replace all of the both incandescents and the mercury fluorescents. And so this legislation suggests that the best thing that we could do for the climate, for consumers' pocketbooks, because it costs less to run a more efficient bulb for a longer period of time, and of course from a toxic health standpoint, is to eliminate the sale of the mercury fluorescents and simply move to the LED alternatives, which are widely available today. We petitioned, VPIRG and some other organizations petitioned the Department of Environmental Conservation to take this step last fall, and they did move forward to prohibit the future sale of the mercury fluorescent screw-in light bulbs that you're familiar with. But the industry is already moving away from those so rapidly that represents only about 2% of sales of mercury fluorescent lighting products today.
Sort of corkscrew style.
Exactly. And the 4-foot lamps, which are used in, again, office, school settings, occasionally in residential settings as well, they represent about 90% of the sale of mercury fluorescent lighting products. And so the 4-foot linear tubes. And you see them quite commonly, but there are LED replacements available for all of these now, and the replacement is quite simple in about 95% of the time. And so if you replace them, you get a product that lasts twice as long, that uses only half as much electricity, it has no mercury. I mean, this really makes sense to be moving in the direction of LEDs. Some will say it's happening anyway. Yeah, that's probably true over time. It will, but it makes sense, I think, for Vermont to be on the leading edge from that climate, that consumer savings standpoint, and of course the toxics of transition.
I know from the bill it says there are over 10,000 models of 4-foot LED retrofit tubes that can replace fluorescent T5s, T8s, and T12s. So a lot has happened actually in the last, 4 or 5 years. It seemed like it was kind of a novel thing, a few years ago. Now they're funding. Do you know how often there's a compatibility issue between the LED version and the fixture itself, so that you have to do something to the fixture to go to an LED tube?
It's in the 90, I think it's about 95% of the time the 4-foot LED is available with as what's called plug and play. You can simply replace it. Even in cases where it may require some retrofit, the analysis that we and our colleagues have done shows that it's a cost savings, even if you had to bring in an electrician to make the relatively small change there that would be necessary.
For ballast or something like that.
Yeah, usually you can avoid that, but there may be some change that you need to make in a very small percentage of time. And again, even at that, you're saving money. This is not a situation where a wise consumer would travel to New Hampshire to buy a mercury fluorescent replacement, because they would be spending more money ultimately to do that. This is a cost savings for Vermonters if we make this move.
Well, thank you. And I don't know if there's some fairly technical details in the bill, and I don't know if I should be asking you on page 7 what coral xanthellite symbioses are. This is a disinfecting light bulb.
Yeah, so I'm on the edge of my element here,
No pun intended.
or beyond. But I would say the point is we want to make clear that there are certain lighting products that are exempt from this. And one that came up on the House side was suntan beds. They are exempt because of the particular kind of light that they put out. They also don't use 4-foot lamps, but they wanted to be clear that that was exempt. There are certain lighting uses that where the LED is not as widely available, and so those are the instances where we see exemptions written into this. Now, what we want to do is just say for those where there are widely available superior LED alternatives, those are the cases in which we should eliminate the future sale of mercury fluorescents.
I didn't know there was still suntan beds.
Yeah, well,
Well,
Senator,
sort of a fad a few years ago.
they still exist, and the industry is concerned to ensure that they still have their lighting products. This bill would not affect them, suffice to say.
You might be able to find a good deal on a used 12-foot satellite dish and a tan bed on eBay. Okay. So in terms of the mechanisms, so we stopped selling these bulbs on January 1, 2024. And then there's later in the bill, there's under continued implementation of approved collection plan. So those who have been selling in the past have an obligation to accept back mercury-containing pre-LED ones going forward as well.
Senator, that's actually a really important part of this, where this is the collection program that, as a matter of public policy, we created about 10 years or so ago here. And that's where you can bring your mercury fluorescents to any hardware store in the state, and they must accept them. That's an important program that doesn't, the need for that doesn't end simply because you stop the sale of the mercury fluorescents, because they will continue to be used for a period of time. In other words, this legislation doesn't require you to replace those immediately in your home, and they will last for some years, and that's why we want to have that program continue for a period of time.
You said this is a money saver for the consumer. Are the costs front-loaded though?
Yeah, there are cases where the LED at the point of sale may cost more than the mercury incandescent. It is in use over time because it lasts, again, twice as long and uses less electricity for every hour of its use. And so payback periods can be matters of months. In every case, it's less than 3 years. So the life of that product in nearly every instance will end up being a cost savings. But you're right that there may be times where the immediate upfront cost is a little bit higher.
Selling anything like that to some people. Yeah, I'm just gonna look at this week.
Yeah,
The whole story.
electric company, some of the electric companies continue to have free offers, big discounts.
The same is true of the incandescents, I guess I would say, Senator, that, but in these cases, to some extent, you're getting what you pay for. So it may be cheaper to get an incandescent. Those will be phased out because in the end, they're so terribly inefficient, bad for the climate, but also ultimately you're spending an awful lot more.
You happen to know if Efficiency Vermont has programs that, I mean, they have moved their bulb replacement program around to help sort of seed the market and get things going. You happen to know if they're doing anything with these 4-foot fluorescents?
They certainly have been active in trying to replace the fluorescents, I believe, across the board. There is no question about the inefficiency relative to LEDs, that again, the incandescents and the mercury fluorescents. Mercury fluorescents, definitely more efficient than incandescent, but not nearly as efficient as the LEDs. And so, yes, I think that they have had and continue to have programs that are focused on moving people away from this. Sure.
They go to hardware stores, advertise on Saturday, such and such will be selling these bulbs. There'll be different types of bulbs. There'll be some whatever Efficiency Vermont to get you the one you want. They'll have coupons and stuff like that. I haven't heard one last 12 months.
Yeah, I know.
Those hardware vary less.
Local hardware store always has an end cap with deeply discounted LED bulbs of different types. They change around. Thank you. Yeah, the old incandescent really should be called light. They should be called meters. Yeah, it's 90% heat, 10% light. Okay, thank you. So, thank you, Mr. Burns, for jumping in.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Mitchell, then you were not here to speak about the H500.
I am not.
Okay,
Thank you though.
you changed your mind. Just raise your hand.
It's like, thank you, where's my kid?
So, any committee discussion about H500? If not, I would welcome a motion to report favorably H500 without change to the rest of the Senate.
Need a vote? Yes, on
Yes, yes, please.
So
Thank you. Will you do the honors, please? So this is.
So this is to move it as we receive it?
Yes, so to move H500 is passed by the House. The favorable vote.
Okay. Senator McCormick,
yes,
Senator McDonald votes yes. Senator Bray,
Yes. We'll keep this open for Senator Westphal will be back shortly. Senator Campion will be in. Thank you. Would anyone here like to report this bill? Okay. Thank you very much.
pretty brief.
pretty brief.
No,
No,
I was talking about my notes,
Oh,
not your
during-
report.
During the 2 years that I shared this committee, the best work we did was on this. And my brother, of course, leading on it. So,
Your presentation on this?
No, this is new to me.
At least it's simple.
Yes, it's simple.
Glad Perch looks at it.
we'll let forget.
Yeah. We'll be on the floor in 44 minutes. We have 2 other bills to get to, so we've not received a request to present the amendment. So,
I think it's gonna be a floor move, right?
well, but to be candid, I think it's a courtesy to always bring, to make an appointment with the committee jurisdiction and present an amendment prior to bringing it to the floor, but it's not always done that way.
We've only had it for a few minutes and seconds.
All right, so thank you for your action on H500. Next up is H446, an act related to miscellaneous natural resources development subjects, also known as the housekeeping bill from A&R. And we also don't have for this, however, I would invite you.
We only have one witness. I'm sorry.
There are no changes to this bill since the last time we met with A&R, other than I just want to view that we've removed the section that was proposing changes to septic law. Because, well, Mr. Beeling was in today, there were enough complications that they thought it merited more time, so that one section of the bill was removed. So, Senator Weston, while you were out, we moved to report favorably H500, act relating to prohibiting the sale of mercury lamps in the state of Vermont. And the vote
It's
is
prohibiting the sale of mercury.
4-foot lights.
the 4-foot tube fluorescents, old style that contain mercury.
Okay, I don't know anything about the issue. Am I gonna get in trouble for this?
We've done this systematically on taking mercury containing bulbs out of commerce. And there are now
I'm
approximately,
trusting you.
there are approximately 10,000 different brands or models available out there of LEDs that plug into the same fixture as the 4-footer. With 95% of the time, all you have to do is put the new bulb in. You need an adjustment to make it work. There's so much work, even with the cost of the adjustment, you still have to.
Thank you.
But I don't doubt you'll hear some complaints. Some people said, I don't want to not be able to buy an incandescent light bulb anymore. Even though the new ones are 10 times as efficient.
You know, all the ones that are made in China, record everything that goes on in the room and send it back to China. So that's why they don't want the new LED lights.
Michelle Bachman actually had a bill of the light bulb freedom.
Light bulb freedom.
Light bulb freedom.
I knew someone who had chickens and they were lamenting that they weren't going to be able to get these
It's a little screwy.
intentionally inefficient bulbs that were for heaters. But you could still buy the red infrared bulbs and keep your chickens warm that way. So the one, I want to just have us have a clean copy of 446. The other thing is H501, the PPAC bill. So my proposal to the committee, and I want to hear what your thinking is to have one more final round of edits to that bill to try to find a way to address a few more things, including the creation of food residuals stream with plastic in it. We also heard from Dr. Roy that we're going to look at it in the DPAC, we should look at it when it comes to hand sort, because sometimes hand sort is great and other times it's not. And then the third category of exposure, he said, was plastic films used on farms themselves. So if we really want to be open-minded about where are the risks of getting plastic into farm soils, we should look on the farm using plastic. We should look at any kind of food residual stream being brought to the farm. And we should look at the hand-picked version too, because not all hand-picking is equal. So my proposal would be to modify 501 to have it be open-minded, not prejudge the outcome of where we should look, and then bring it back. In essence, it would study the issue as a moratorium still don't exacerbate the problem by creating more facilities doing the same thing. But meanwhile, get a study so we can try to get a handle on it. It's frustrating here. We know so little that we shouldn't act. To me, it's like we should take a reasonable precautionary approach and then do whatever we can to learn more so we don't end up with problems, 2 and 3 and 5 years down the road. So that's what I was thinking, and I don't know how that strikes people. So we have that ready to put on 446.
Repeat part of that again.
Sure.
My brain is not working.
That's okay. Mine is maybe going a little too fast. Weeds with it. So we have the miscellaneous, the housekeeping bill from AR. And we've cleaned it up since the last time we took testimony. And my proposal would be, since it's a miscellaneous bill, and this involves action based at ANR, it's a good fit. We would take 501, which is on DPAC. Follow Dr. Roy's suggestion. If we want to look at microplastics getting into farms, let's look at, regardless, let's be open-minded and look at how much of it is sheet plastic being used on a farm, how much of it comes out of DPAC, and how much comes out of hand sorting.
And so this is plastics and soils on farms. And those three places. Okay,
Right, so the 501 as it started it was just looking at DPAC. And then his testimony to me made a lot of sense, but we don't prejudge that that's the only risk, the only sort of vector you have to getting plastics on farms, so.
their biggest place plastics on farms is wrapping hay bales. And so I don't know which category that fits into. But that white or black plastic that you wrap those bales in is everywhere.
Now you can send in your soil and they will match the color of the plastic to your soil's cover.
Oh, okay.
That a joke or something?
Yeah, that's a joke. That's a joke.
You never know.
And for an extra 10%.
I spent enough
Shredded
time,
in advance.
I spent
To
enough
rototill
time
in.
around this, that it's been years now, I'm beginning to get them, so maybe you should.
Well, who knows, maybe
Maybe Senator Westminster, clear it out.
let's just say that there's a lot of interesting comments in this, I never know what side of things we're on. I'm ordering camo next year, actually,
So is that, would that be considered sheet plastic?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Agents of Agriculture had a program, I don't know if it's still fully operative, where they were trying to collect that, but it also turned out to be hard to handle. When it's white and black back to back, then it's actually, you can't process them together, and how do you get them apart? There's no way to get them apart. So there was that complication. So I don't know that the program's operating successfully, as you point out. There's a lot of those giant marshmallows out in the fields every year, and eventually you end up you see it around tree lines, here, there,
It's everywhere.
so that's the proposal. I don't know if that strikes people as a reasonable plan of attack. If so, that's what I would bring back to committee tomorrow, and we would attach and vote that. Right, now you're gonna have to read this.
Yeah,
Real
laughed out loud.
Can't.
I'm sorry, it was behind a mask. You can,
Sheet plastic comes in camo and clan.
I don't guess.
white clan.
KLAN.
Oh, okay. Onward. So, hearing no further discussion, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So we're ready to act. And that brings us to page 175, an activating the beverage container redemption system. We also still don't have Michael ready because he's busy elsewhere. But he did prepare a draft for us, and I'm ready to walk through that with the committee, because I have to make sure it had highlighting so that we could look at the changes pretty easily. And probably if I find the right folder, it's a lot of folders going at the moment. Thank you. All right, so changes are highlighted yellow. I'll just walk us through what, so I did my best at taking in what I heard in testimony, my notes, the committee discussion, and putting in the draft. It's not saying that this is exactly where we should land, but it was me saying, okay, these are things we were working on, and I think this is either where we landed or close. So the first change is page 2. It just asserts here that it's a deposit of not less than 5 cents. The significance why that's inserted there is because later there was a trigger mechanism to automatically increase the price of the deposit, and so I'll wait till we get to that comment on it. Page 6, there was just a cross-reference and the wrong word was in the line, it said product instead of producer. That came from Mr. Chapman. Page 10, it was just some wordsmithing to get the language right. Page, just a phrase that meets the requirements of technical edit. Page 11, a meaningful edit based on Mr. Burns's remark that City of Montpelier is barely over 8,000, and for numerous complaints about the City of Montpelier not having a redemption center, it would seem somewhat ironic if the capital of the state had no way to redeem. So this sets that threshold, at least one point of redemption per municipality with a population of 7,000 or more. So break it down.
So this means Montpelier's got to get a redemption.
Yes, and I don't know who else was on one side of the 8,000 line and now will be in.
I'm sure there'll be somebody that's in 69.99.
Yeah, so 7, 8 is, not low enough, so we just drop it. Why not drop it to 6?
Well, because the lower the number goes, the more you have an obligation to create centers, so.
Isn't that a good thing?
I guess I would say at one level, sure, like more redemption centers. The question was, how do you sort of find an intermediate position, because it will require investment and creation of redemption centers. So,
But that's not any like the Royalton Bethel transfer station collects deposit cans, deposit bottles as well.
so not having been part of that working group that met outside, I think I might turn to Mr. Burke and say, do you participate in the discussion around the number? Maybe you could fill us in a little bit on how the group settled at 8, and then you would offer, let's not leave Montpelier out. Basically.
It was an important part of the conversation among the working group members to try to ensure that there would be more opportunities for convenient redemption for people, particularly as this legislation would expand the number of containers covered by both law. There are different ways of doing that. This is one of those that would ensure, based on size of municipality. We talked both about a number, and we named specific communities as part of the conversation, because Montpelier was one of the specific communities named in the working group conversation. When I went to look at what's the actual population, it was so close to the line, I just felt that it was representative fairly of what the working group had talked about. Senator McCormick, you're absolutely right. It could go lower, but there would be a bit more obligation. When we looked at the numbers, it might be another half a dozen communities or something. I mean, these are not huge numbers, but there are some. And I just felt that 7,000 did accurately reflect what I felt was the intention of the group to cover at least Montpelier and similarly sized. If we went lower, I think it's justifiable, but it wouldn't necessarily reflect as closely the conversation of the working group. That's why I was comfortable with 7 as a suggestion here. As a policy matter, you could go lower, but I think 7 is not an unreasonable start. And if at some point we see there's a real need, there is an opportunity to come back and try to make some adjustments too.
I'm satisfied.
Okay.
I'll be good.
So I'm going to move us on then to page 15. We're up. There's a program and fiscal audit. There's both actually. So the audit shall make recommendations. I don't know what it needs to say. Well, looking. And I think the first 2 edits were just wordsmithing to get it right. The first substantive change, though, is really at the bottom of page 15 through the top of page 16. So it had that the nickel became a dime if the redemption rate, which is currently, I think, roughly 77% on the current bottle bill, and expected to drop some because when you expand what's covered, there'll be a transition period where people have to learn to redeem other kinds of bottles or containers. But anyways, it was a mechanical feature that said the fee shall go up if you don't meet the target within 2 years, if you fail to meet it in 2 consecutive years. The concern that I shared with people is that the legislature, only the legislature can raise fees, and that it's our job to be in the driver's seat on that. So it sets the schedule, and then it says, okay, use the same schedule, and each year Secretary A&R reports out to the committees on the current rate and a recommendation of whether the beverage should be increased to improve reaction rates for beverage containers. So
That's part of finance stuff.
well, I think we're going to go to finance today. Section 3, page 17 is the next update, and let me. Okay, so the nature of the changes that are going on in here are related to a one step back. We set up a division of the sheets between, with half of them going back to the producer responsibility organization and half to the state. Change here is to do this for a period of 5 years and then evaluate whether or not we still want to have half the sheets go back to the PRO. Part of the rationale for sending it to the PRO to begin with is to help stand up the program and support it. Could be infrastructure investments, might be overhead of running the program, etc. So in order to be able to say that we only do it for 5 years and then sunset that division of the sheets, Michael had to leave in the existing language. We basically have a sunset on it, which returns us to the underlying language. So you'll see both the way you do it now, section 3. And then following on later in the bill, you'll see where we sunset back to the section 3 provisions. Section 4 is type 3 procedures. So as part of the work of the department when adopting permits, it had been listed as a type 4 process, which didn't require public notice and comment. The concern I had, and that we talked about in the committee, was this is an important program to many people, so let's make sure that notice and comment is a more robust process. Mr. Chapman suggested changing from type 4, which has a lower level of outreach, to type 3, which has more. That's what carries on through all the way to the bottom of 18 and through half of 19. Then we jump to page 21, systems analysis of the container system. An earlier draft had discussed this. It came out, and Mr. Chapman suggested bringing it back in. Seems like a wise choice. So basically, it says that we should, on or before January 15, 2028, A&R shall submit to the House Committee on Natural Resources, Senate Committee on Natural Resources, a written report of total system costs associated with the beverage container redemption system under Chapter 53, including climate impacts. So the goal was, we didn't have an explicit language saying analyze those costs and report them out. And since we're interested in a cost-effective system, having explicit systems analysis report, which A&R would like to do, like a good thing to add. That's followed without any change to the beverage container implementation study. Then you see a highlighted change on 23, which is the new repeal of the beverage container deposit sheets. Takes place on 20. Program stood up, went with it, and then it's repealed. You go back to the current distribution of the sheets. 100% to the state, as and currently divided between. For the clean water customers. So those are that's the collection. And it's Senator Campus, so we're walking through a newer version of the beverage bill.
Thank you.
So sorry, you need something here.
No, I apologize. I'm dealing with a bill in education, 727, which will all become familiar with soon.
Take a look. Wait.
So tell me what this, I don't want to rehash things, but what is this doing to my small guy? I know we've had this conversation. Is this putting folks at jeopardy of closing or?
No, so there is a provision for smaller producers.
Okay.
Like the exemption for stores under
5,000 square feet still, okay.
And I think part of what we were discussing is the development of and this would come up through there's a lengthy process to stand up the program.
Yeah.
With the PRO, one of the options we discussed is that a hub and spoke model where there'll be redemption centers.
Yeah, no, I feel, I don't want you to have to rehash everything I've,
Okay.
if there's, that was my biggest concern. I guess, I hate to do it, but I know Senator Westman has been watching this issue. Are you comfortable, Senator Westman?
On some of the questions that we just had gone through.
Yeah.
And I have the same question.
Sure.
What is the date that this goes live?
5. I got it low down, double check because we can make a lot of dates. There's standing up the PRO. Yeah, so January 1, 2025 is when the definition is altered. So then it triggers all those products coming to the system. But then we have earlier deadlines, for instance, registering products, creating, standing up a PRO, labeling requirements, so that things are scannable. Those are the main earlier deadlines.
You can't get into your vote in your system.
In effective date's the first one. Page 26. The second one. So we've had other votes while you've been out.
Right, I understand. Yeah, I'll catch up with Jude.
Okay. The
So this will go to those finance and approach. So with the May 6th deadline, is that all intents and purposes? Yeah, or, okay,
Well.
Yeah,
They
okay.
get around here.
yeah, you never sit back, yeah, that's true.
This is the fastest we could get another round of.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So with that, I don't know if there's any more questions or discussion, or if people are comfortable moving forward. Okay. This version of the bill, it would be to amend each 175 with draft 2.1.
Need a motion?
Yes, sir.
So moved.
Any further committee?
Sorry.
So I think my only comment will be, yeah, I'll support it. I will also just follow its path a little bit in checking with my local folks and make sure that things are okay as they make their way around.
So then the motion would be to amend H175, draft 2.1, dated 4/27/22, timestamp 5/34. There's no further discussion. Clerk will call the roll.
Senator McDonald,
Yes.
Senator McCormick,
Yes.
Senator Westman,
Yes.
Senator Bray,
Yes.
Senator Campion votes yes.
Now we need a motion to,
So moved.
report Bill Sullivan. Okay, thank you, Senator McDonald.
Senator McDonald,
Yes.
Senator McCormick,
Yes.
Senator Westman,
Yes.
Senator Bray,
Yes.
sorry, Senator Campion, yes.
Do we have anyone who has a thirst for this problem?
Thanks, Chief.
Don't everyone clamor. All right, so I'll just follow. Thank you, everyone. And with that, we have actually concluded our business for the morning. And thank you all. So again, we'll see 446 and a new version of 501 tomorrow. And at that point, we'll have come quite close to clearing the decks. Thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.
Like your bill.
Right, so we're using heat standards.
No. No, we just.
Oh, okay.
Square feet, okay, true storage. Yeah, that's.
Yeah, no, I have that.
So.
Okay, great.
Was that
Your position on the appropriation.
yes? Favor. Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm dealing with an issue with Starksboro. Yeah, thank you.
We have to start for.
You have no idea.
I
You have to clear this is the gas station half of the store, or this is the.
This has been my
Grocery half.
7:30 on
Two stores.
Starksboro, Lincoln. Are we off?
It is.
I didn't even know.
So you'll give me that.
I will, that's what we will. Thank you. We did the same for us. Yeah, no.